How's it going, folks? Hang on a second while I put this earring in. Hang on. Here we go. I don't know why I'm just in the mood to have an earring tonight. Usually I don't care about it, but what the heck. Okay. How's that for style? I'm back to do another segment of my top 100 favorite films. And today we're doing films from, let's see, 40 through 21, which means that next week will be my top 20 and then we'll all be done. So thanks again for all the people who have been watching. Thanks for all the great comments, the support, for watching everybody else's videos. In fact, we have a new participant, my good friend Robert Harrison, Bob. He made a video tonight. He's going to do his top 100 favorite films. Made a really good list. And Ian's video was already up, another very good list. And I don't know about James yet. James might be putting his up tomorrow, so we shall see. Anyway, let's get started. Coming in at number 40, this is a very sad film from 2013 called Nebraska. Bruce Dern plays a man who is slowly losing touch with his life, losing touch with reality. He gets one of these form letters in the mail which says, "Congratulations, you have just won $1 million. All you have to do is A, B, C, D." Well, nobody can convince him that, look, you haven't won $1 million. They want you to subscribe to some magazines or some nonsense. So he is determined to go to, I think it's Lincoln, Nebraska, to submit this and pick up his $1 million. And he's living in, I think it's either Montana or Idaho. I think it's Montana. So his grown son, played by Will Forte, decides to go with him just to take care of his dad, right? Of course, they have kind of a difficult relationship. So it turns into this road trip, this odyssey, back into this man's past, because he grew up in a very small town in Nebraska. So he goes back to that town to visit some of his family and also some people that he knew when he was younger, including a woman that he once loved when he was very young. And his wife joins the road trip after a while, and she's just the biggest bitch you'll ever see on screen, played by June Squibb. It's a good performance, but it's not a very likable character. Anyway, it's a terrific film, black and white cinematography. It's very, very poignant, very sad. At least it was to me. Okay. Next up is a classic film noir from 1945. This is Laura, directed by Otto Preminger, starring Gene Tierney, Dana Andrews, Clifton Webb. It's about a young woman, a beautiful young fashion designer named Laura, who has at the beginning of the film she's killed, right? And the detective, played by Dana Andrews, has to investigate her murder, and he finds himself falling in love with this dead woman. It's very romantic. It's beautiful to look at. It's so beautifully shot in black and white, of course, that almost every scene could be a portrait. It's just amazingly beautiful. And it also has beautiful music. The theme by David Raksin became a standard. It's very, very haunting. They play it incessantly throughout the movie, and it's perfect. Next up is a classic performance by Bette Davis, Jezebel, 1938. The one where she plays the fiery Southern belle, who to me is even more interesting than Scarlett O'Hara, who would come a year later. This is 1938. Bette Davis won her second Academy Award, directed by William Wyler, co-starring Henry Fonda and George Brent. And Bette Davis is able to take you on this roller coaster ride of being a feisty character, then an evil character, and then she wins your heart again. In the hands of a lesser actress, it could be very cartoonish, but it's not at all with Bette Davis. And this is the very famous one where she's at this this beautiful ball in New Orleans where all the young virgins are supposed to be wearing white, and she wears this fiery red dress, which of course it's a black and white film, but you know that dress is red. It's just a great, great movie. Next up is a classic silent movie, Pandora's Box, starring the beautiful Louise Brooks, directed by G.W. Pabst. 1928, Louise Brooks, Hollywood star who was beginning to get some notoriety as an actress in Hollywood films, took a chance and went to Germany and made this beautiful art film, which didn't get her the proper recognition that she deserved for many, many years later. But that's another story, which you will also find in this package from the Criterion Collection. There's an hour-long documentary about Louise Brooks and her career. It's called Louise Brooks Looking for Lulu. Lulu was the name of the character she played in this film that she was always classified with in real life. And I'm going to make this kind of a tie between both of the film Pandora's Box and the documentary that's included in this package, because the story of Louise Brooks's life and career is almost more fascinating than any movie she was ever in. So I highly recommend this. All right. Next up, another silent film from 1919, sometimes listed as 1920. This is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Beautiful, 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 mysterious, hypnotic, strange film that, wow, I don't know what to say about it. It's just all about hypnotism, and just the imagery is just incredible. And I'm going on and on here. This is a DVD from Kino Lorber, and of course, it's very well done. It's a beautiful image, but I'm actually considering upgrading this to Blu-ray just to get it even better. I don't know. And I don't usually do that. Next up is a film that I just saw last year. It's called The Endless, which this came out of nowhere for me. I didn't know who any of these people were. Directed by the two guys who also star in it as brothers, and I couldn't really tell you their names. I can't remember. But it's about these two young men who grew up in this very strange suicide religious cult, about people who believe that they were in connection with some strange being from the beyond who was going to ask them to come home someday, some nonsense like that. Anyway, these two guys, they managed to escape the cult when they were very young, but they've never been able to escape it in their minds. So they decide to go back to this cult, which is way, way out in the country. It's a beautiful location, and they're trying to get closure, but they find themselves getting pulled back in. They get a lot more than closure. They get, well, you'll see what they get. It's a beautiful film. I was very, very impressed by it. Great special effects, but even more than the special effects, it has a good story, and the actors are very, very good. Next up is Antonioni's Blow Up, 1966. Michelangelo Antonioni decided to do something. Well, this is first English language film, and he went to London. He wanted to do something to reflect the pop culture of London among the young people at that time, the youth culture. David Hemmings plays a photographer who very self-centered and has everything he seems to want. And one day he takes a walk in a park and he sees a couple of people. One of them is Vanessa Redgrave. Sees them off in the distance, and he just snapping pictures because like two people are in love and all this. And then when he goes home and he starts to look at the pictures, he thinks he sees something that he's not quite sure of. So he blows the pictures up larger and larger and larger until he finds, I'm not going to tell you, classic movie. The first time I saw it way back in 1980, I walked out after about 15 minutes because I thought, God, this is boring. Decades later, when I got around to seeing it again, it's one of my favorite films. So we all change. Next up is a classic American film from 1975, Robert Altman's Nashville. This is new on my list. I saw this movie when it first came out and liked it, but I was kind of, I don't know, I guess I just saw it as being a culture that I didn't relate to and didn't care about. The country music culture in Nashville and all the people in the film who were somehow associated with it. I didn't like the music, and I don't know, I always thought it was just kind of comedic. Well, I'm watching it again, and again, with older eyes and older perceptions, I absolutely loved it. It's kind of a microcosm of the American culture of the time and the place, certainly. Great actors involved. We have Lily Tomlin, we have Keith Carradine, we have Shelley Duvall, we have Michael Murphy, Barbara Harris. Just a really, and really, I appreciate the music a lot more. The big stars in the film, they all wrote and performed their own music, and some of them are quite good. So, especially Keith Carradine. So, okay. Next up is a classic film noir, 1947, Out of the Past. Robert Mitchum, Jane Greer, Kirk Douglas. Beautiful film to look at, black and white cinematography, all about a man who is trying to live down his unhappy past, but he gets pulled back into it big time by the woman who broke his heart once, and she's out to break his heart again. Okay, Robert Mitchum at his absolute best, perfectly teamed up with Jane Greer. Next up is the Humphrey Bogart film, and like I said in one of my previous videos, I'm turning into a Bogart freak. Here's a 4-movie compilation from Turner Classic Movies, and one of them is High Sierra from 1941, which I had never seen in my entire life until last year sometime, and I just fell in love with it. Ida Lupino is top billed, and Bogart made this film right before he did The Maltese Falcon, and this was the one which set him on the road to finally becoming a major star. The Maltese Falcon really did it for him, but this is such an impressive performance about a man who just gets, well, it's just a very tragic story. The details, I don't know. I don't want to go too much into it. I need to watch it again and again, but it's just a very, very intense performance by Bogart. Kind of lets you know what he will be doing later on in his life, in his career, when he does things like The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Yeah, this is a good companion piece to that film, which is also on my next list, by the way. Next up is Ingmar Bergman's Wild Strawberries from 1957. Victor Sjöström, in his last performance as an actor, of course, he was not only an actor, but he was also a director, and the man who was credited with inspiring Bergman to become a film director. Beautiful film, again, about a man who is confronting his past, and a lot of flashbacks and memories, and very, very sad memories as we learn more about what this man's life has been like. Bibi Andersson is in it. Ingrid Thulin, who is really a terrific actress. Again, beautiful cinematography, black and white. And I saw that for the first time last year too. So, as you know, I've been talking a little bit about Bergman lately, so it's all new for me. Yeah. Stop babbling. Next up is another Louise Brooks silent classic, which I have two versions of. This is Beggars of Life from 1928, directed by William Wellman. Top billed is Wallace Beery, followed by Richard Arland, and then Louise Brooks. Louise Brooks plays a young woman who dresses up as a boy and runs off with Richard Arland because she has just killed her stepfather who tried to rape her. So they run off together. Richard Arland is somebody who just came to the house looking for food, and he found this scene where this guy had been murdered, and he takes her under his wing and says, you need to disguise yourself as a boy to be safe among all these men. And they hop a train, and it shows their adventure. They meet Wallace Beery, who was, of course, crazy. Very beautiful film. I have two versions of this. One's from Grapevine Video, and the other is from Kino. This is a beautiful image, but I actually like this one a little bit better because I like the music that's with it. And it also has some of the scenes are tinted blue, which kind of gives it a really interesting look. But great performance by everybody concerned. Good example of what Louise Brooks was capable of as an actress. Next up is a film from, I believe, 1997 or 98. Samuel L. Jackson in a film called The Red Violin, which is one of the saddest films you will ever see. It's all about a violin that was made in Italy back in the 1600s. The story follows the violin all through history, where it goes to different locations, different people, and their experiences with it, and until it ends up in the present day in an auction in Montreal. And Samuel L. Jackson is a man who knows how to discover whether or not violins are authentic, right? If they are imitations, someone's trying to pass them off as antiques, but he falls under the spell of the red violin, and he has to find out what the story is and why it was called that. And the secret will just break your heart. It also has some of the most haunting music I've ever heard in a movie. So yeah, but just be ready to cry. Next is a classic musical from 1933, 42nd Street, directed by Lloyd Bacon at Warner Brothers, along with the choreographer Busby Berkeley, who created these incredibly unique geometric dance routines. And it's all about the production of a Broadway show, which when you see the musical numbers on the screen, they are musical numbers which would never work on a real stage. They can only be done in a movie. This was the film that brought the screen musical to a whole new level. Before that, they were all pretty much photographed stage performances where everything was just kind of stationary and people were just dancing and singing across the stage. But this one brought different camera angles. It's a very good, very solid story about let's just see the background of the way people work so hard to make these Broadway shows and what they go through, and especially all the young women who are trying to make it in show business and what they have to deal with. Warner Baxter plays the director, Bebe Daniels is the star, and Dick Powell and Ruby Keeler are two of the people who are in the show. All right? Great, great movie. Next up is a film that I will love for the rest of my life. This is the original Dracula, 1931, directed by Todd Browning. Bela Lugosi in the performance that stayed with him until the day he died. But man, nobody else, well, Christopher Lee maybe. Christopher Lee put his own mark on Dracula in his own way, but it's always going to be Bela Lugosi for me. And I know the film tends to be kind of slow and very stagey, but to me, the first half hour or so is just so incredibly atmospheric, so gothic. You know, I am Dracula, coming down that staircase, the cobwebs, I mean, everything is just, I love it. I will always love this movie. Saw this on the big screen last year, and it worked. It's just like seeing it for the first time. Next up, William Castle's classic House on Haunted Hill, Vincent Price. Wow. 1958. I love this movie so much. Saw it in the theater when I was a kid, and have always loved it. It's still one of the best haunted house stories that I've ever seen. Even though really nothing supernatural happens, it's all kind of, you know, it's a big plot, which I won't tell you about. But I think pretty much all of you out there have seen this, but I just love it. Of course, this one had the gimmick in some of the theaters when there's a certain scene where a skeleton is walking around, and a skeleton was supposed to be coming out on a rope into the theater over people's heads. They didn't do that in Danville, Illinois. Oh well. Next up, David Lynch, Mulholland Drive, one of the best mysteries ever made. Absolutely mystical. It's a mystical mystery. These two women who get involved with this incredible story. I don't know where to start. Only David Lynch could do something like this. It has some really creepy moments in it. Naomi Watts is so good. She is so good in this. Is it a dream? Part of it is. When does she wake up? We're not sure. Let's go back and watch it again. And it's out on Criterion, so on Blu-ray. Yes, yes. Mulholland Drive. Next up, here it is, The Maltese Falcon. I love this movie so much. I've seen this so many times, and I never get tired of watching it. I just read the book a few months ago. Yeah, I'm looking at my bookcase over here. And the novel is terrific, and they do a good job of bringing the novel to the screen. And of course, before this came out in 1941, it was filmed in two different versions. In 1931, it was filmed with Ricardo Cortez and Bebe Daniels, and that's not a terrible version. But in 1936, it was filmed again under the title Satan Met a Lady, starring Bette Davis and Warren William. And it really is a terrible film. They brought a lot of comedy into it, and they changed the story way too much. It just was not a very good film. For some reason, John Huston got his first chance to be a director at Warner Brothers, and he decided that he wanted to redo the film again, and they let him do it. And this is such a classic. Bogart, Mary Astor, Peter Lorre, Sidney Greenstreet, The Stuff That Dreams Are Made Of. Wow, what a great movie. Next up, Bette Davis in The Letter, 1940, directed by William Wyler. She got another Academy Award nomination for her performance in this film, which is one of the best she ever did. One of the most controlled performances of a very complicated character that she has ever done. And of course, this was a play by W. Somerset Maugham originally, and it was made into a film in 1928 with Gene Eagles, which is also a very interesting film. And this is an early example of film noir with the lighting and all that, and it's just beautiful to look at, and it's one of those films I never get tired of watching. Bette Davis. And finally, we have one of my favorite horror films of all time, The Innocents from 1961, Deborah Kerr, based on the short novel by Henry James called The Turn of the Screw. And believe me, the story, which I actually read that last year as well, and I liked it, but when I see the way they opened it up to make this film, they really opened it up and added more and more black and white cinematography, beautiful locations, gothic mystery, and it's a creepy story. It's very, very sexual, very adult, and it's even creepier because it involves two children played by Martin Stevens and Pamela Franklin, who are very, very good in this movie also. But Deborah Carr is just amazing. Imagining that she sees ghosts and she thinks there's something, well, never mind. Anyway, The Innocents. If you have not seen this, please get around to doing it. It's out in Criterion, and I'm done. Another 20-minute video, almost 21. Thanks for sticking with me, and let me know what you think.